I'm Gary Quinton. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in January of 2012, and this is my wife Judy Quinton.
My name is Ruth Baxter. My husband Alan retired from the provincial government in 1998. He was diagnosed with frontal temporal lobe degeneration in 2009, and he's living at Luther Home now.
My name is Tanis Romery. I'm 70 years old. I'm a retired nurse, and I was diagnosed 3 years ago by a neurologist with a dementia.
I used to instruct Taoist Tai Chi, and one day I was teaching and I could see the members of my class sort of looking at each other and I actually asked them, I said, am I telling you a story that I told you already today? And they looked at each other and said, yes, Gary.
We could see that there was funny things happening, like he would
go the wrong way,
or walk in the back door, for an example, wrong, or get into the car. Instead of getting into the driver's seat, he'd get into the back seat.
Right after he retired, he decided to take piano lessons, and he said it was for his brain. He was terrible at it, but he struggled and he kept going, and then it was just he was doing things that he said were for his brain, but I just never thought of it as a dementia. But I guess he was struggling with his brain and I didn't know it.
Probably a couple of years ago, he had trouble with remote controls and answering machines, and so my antennas were up.
Not being able to see and hear everything. For example, getting up in the middle of the night. I'd finally fall asleep. I didn't go to bed until he was in bed and I knew he was sleeping, because he would get up and he would go up, open the front door and go outside.
Well, I mean, for him, where he has directional problems and he has visual problems, it's much harder than some people who have dementia. So you have to be aware of where they are all the time. You have to be conscious that you can be walking down the street and he can see somebody else and he can start walking off with that person and not with you.
It's when you finally sleep or you're doing something and you can't keep an eye on them, and the fact that they're going to turn the stove on, try to cook something and walk away, and then you smell something is burning. It's things like that.
The first thing we had to do is we had to sell the house and get a smaller house. First of all, less work for me, but more so that it would be easier for him to maneuver.
It doesn't affect his ability to sing. We go to the church service. He says about the first 3 or 4 lines of the Lord's Prayer.
I may have dementia, but I can still do most my activities of daily living, and any activities that I like to do, I'm still able to do it.
I may have dementia, but my life is not over, and I can do lots of things still, and probably hope I'll be able to do that for a long, long time, doing things that I like to do.
I think you have to be proactive. I think if you find out that, or you see that there's something wrong, I think you do have to get on it. And if you go to a doctor and the doctor says it doesn't appear there's anything wrong, I think if you know within your heart, I think you got to really beat on the doctor and just say, hey, you know, something's wrong here. We need some help.
If I were to have one, I would like them to really learn as much as they can and get involved with groups or as much knowledge as they could, because it would not only help me, but it would certainly help them.
2009 was the catastrophe, and we were diagnosed And by 2010, he was in a personal care home by the end of the year.
It wasn't the best news I ever had, you know. I mean, oh, gosh. You know, it's not something I can take a drug for or exercise and get rid of, you know, and it is something, there's a clear path. And it's not an uphill run, you know, that once you get to the top, you've got it beat.
He was always my friend. We met our first year in university, and I enjoyed his humor and I enjoyed his intellect so much because he was so curious, and he had such a vast knowledge of so many different things, so I really miss him. I miss him, I miss his company.